This is Randall from the Eric W. Gritsch Memorial Fund. I'm here again for the first time in over a year with theology student and doctoral candidate Brach Jennings, who became the second winner of our Gritsch Fellowship Scholarship for Theological Research. Brach used that award to get to Germany to study, and once there surprised us all by using their considerable wits and talents to find ways to stay and complete their doctoral studies in Germany. So welcome back, Brach. Your original plan was for a few months over there, but here you are 2 years later. Are things working out according to your new schedule?
Well, it's also a pleasant surprise to me because I was fully intending to come back after 4 months, but I guess the Holy Spirit had other plans. So yes, literally everyone was surprised, including the person making the application. Yeah, I'm still on schedule. I will be done with my doctorate, God willing, by the end of September 2022. And that means done with everything, the dissertation and then the final oral exams as well. So that's my hope.
So Dr. Moltmann is now still your primary advisor for this. And Linda Thomas back in Chicago, she's one of your reviewers and all of that.
Yes, and Volker Lepine is my other examiner. He's technically my secondary examiner, and then Linda Thomas is a special third examiner. That was how we set it up in Tübingen. But Dr. Moltmann is my main supervisor, yes.
Great. So you have had to really just dive right in and take a lot of the challenges of being an American in Germany and time of COVID head on and everything. And then there's the whole, German language thing, which you were coming along with very well when we talked last year, and now you've had another whole year under your belt. How's your fluency coming?
I would say my German is good, solid, and strong. Those are the adjectives I would use. I now frequently, if not even a majority of the time, have conversations in German with most of my friends. One of my good friends over here is a full German American, so she and I speak English with each other. But otherwise, with my other friends over here, I have now shifted, and it was just in these last couple months when I finally got the courage to do it. I've now shifted basically to German. And they're very nice. They correct my German when I make all the typical mistakes of a foreigner, but I'm trying to move from the passive knowledge of German, which comes from all the reading and all the Netflix watching that I've done in German, to that active use of it. So that has been an interesting switch. It's been a fun switch, most of the time fun, sometimes frustrating. I had a few weeks ago where I was in Hamburg at the organization that gave me my doctoral scholarship, and I decided to speak basically only German for 2 days, and by the end of it I was so exhausted, not only from the really making this effort to only use German, but also just from the workshop that I was doing, that I could think the words, but I couldn't get them to come out. And it was a hilarious experience. I'd never had this before. And I said, finally, I understand how my German friends who have gone abroad to English-speaking countries feel when they first get there. And because they've all told me, I was so exhausted after the second day. And that was me in that workshop in Hamburg.
Do you ever go whole days without English?
I don't know that I go whole days without English, because I'm talking with friends from America on Facebook, or, I'm writing my dissertation in English, for instance. So, and I'm certainly reading a lot of English literature, and and I actually speak with Professor Lepine exclusively in English because he did the opposite of me. I did the foreign experience coming to Germany. He has gone to America to be professor of historical theology at Yale, and he started that just in August. But I don't think I've gone a whole day completely without English.
How about this then? A lot of people from other cultures and other languages that come to America, they tend to speak English with us, or if we go over there, they'll adjust to our English because they basically, you know, they're better at English than we are at their language, and
Right.
there's a condescending aspect to it. But your German people over there, do they speak to you in German mostly, or some of them like to speak to you in English, perhaps because they want the practice themselves? But
Well, sure, and I think I don't think it's even done so much out of a condescending attitude as a, you know, people want to make you feel comfortable, and if you're more comfortable speaking English and they're quite good at English, they'll speak with you in English. And I was so afraid of making mistakes. I mean, that's what it came down to, was this, you know, I don't want to sound like an idiot. You know, I'm supposed to be getting a doctorate, which presumably means I'm not an idiot, but I'm, you know, I don't want to sound like one. And so it just took me longer than I wish it would have to gain the confidence to say, no, I make mistakes. I will make mistakes. I will continue to make mistakes, but darn it, I'm still gonna do it. And that's where I've gotten to in these last couple months. So that was a major step. I wish it would have happened in my first year rather than in my second. You know, I'd been here more than 2 years before I finally was able to get over that. But I know other foreigners that took 2 years rather than one to do what I did. So I won't be too hard on myself. But now I pretty much said to my German friends, you know, let's just speak German, and I will screw up, and oh well.
I also remember from our last conversation that you were taking you were working on your Hebrew, that you were taking an online Zoom class where you were basically learning Hebrew through German. And
Yeah.
how did that go?
Well, my written exam was terrible because I got very nervous on that day. I had something else happen external to the Hebrew thing, and it just threw me off, and I didn't have the necessary time to sort of reshift my thinking. So the written exam was actually quite bad, but the oral exam was really strong, and I think the oral exam more reflected where my Hebrew was than the written thing I did. So I did pass my exam. And I was grateful for that. And then I did Hebrew still just for fun in the fall semester. Well, we call it winter semester, in the winter semester. And then I did it through about half of this last summer semester. But I really wanted to finish my first drafts of all of the Luther in my dissertation before Professor Lepine went to Yale. So I sent my beloved Hebrew teacher an email, and I said, I just can't, because I was just doing it for fun. You know, I said, I just can't really keep up with this right now because I want to finish Luther before Professor Lepine goes to Yale. But I'll come back in the fall, which is what I'm hoping to do. I'll either go back into Hebrew, or I'll take his, he usually does a lecture on one of the biblical books, and I think that could be fun. So I'm going to do either the strict language practice or the course on the biblical book that uses Hebrew. I haven't decided yet, but in any case, that is my plan. So, and I really enjoyed Hebrew, actually, much more than Latin. I'm not a Latin fan at all, and I don't know why. I don't know why I'm so averse to it. But there's something about the strangeness of Hebrew, or the musicality of the language, even, that really that I really, really liked.
Well, I've always been really fascinated by how, you know, the Bible was written in other languages. You know, most of the Old Testament and the Torah is the Hebrew, and most of the New Testament was Greek and all of that. And I always wondered what it was like for somebody that was a theological scholar who learned to study the Bible in English. And then when you finally gain those language skills, have you gone back and read some of the Old Testament in Hebrew and some of the New Testament in Greek? And I've always wondered what that would be like, and what.
I don't do that the same way that I read Karl Barth in German, but I certainly, I mean, even when I was in the States, I would use the Accordance Bible software. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It can be a bit of a crutch if one isn't careful, but I always would try when I was preaching, for instance, to go back to that and to do the word studies and to try to get some idea. And this was just in Greek at that time. I didn't know Hebrew, unfortunately. And honestly, that's a real critique I have of the American system now, that they're going completely away from any language requirements. It's not just the seminaries that I went to, Yale Divinity School or Harvard are trying to do the same thing. And I don't know, I think Tübingen is a bit in the opposite extreme, right? Because they won't allow candidates to be pastors over here unless they have a Grecum, a Latinum, and a Hebraicum. And the Grecum and the Latinum is classical Greek and classical Latin. So you're learning Cicero Latin and Platon Greek. And I think that's a bit too far the other way. But I certainly think especially for Protestants, I mean, to have absolutely no exposure to these languages, I just think is criminal. And I think it's a real something the American theological institutions really need to consider carefully before we say, well, our numbers are down and we want to get students out fast, so we're going to let the languages go. Yeah, but the Reformation is a movement founded on the biblical languages in some extent. And I'm not saying that one needs to be a scholar of languages. I'm certainly not. What am I talking about? I'm talking about word studies. I'm talking about looking at how certain verbs are formed. I'm talking about a basic overview of the biblical languages. But that has even decreased since I started my studies. And that was just 10 years ago. And I was right on the cusp between we're still going to do it somewhat, and we're basically not going to do it at all. Or we're only going to teach the Bible software, the accordance, which I didn't even have when I started seminary, by the way. I got that later. We're only going to teach accordance, but we're going to teach you nothing about the grammar, for instance, of the Greek New Testament or the grammar of the Old Testament. I just really think that's a mistake, honestly.
I'm kind of fascinated with the subject because I've read a few articles recently, and you're probably much more aware of this than I am, about how every new translation of the Bible that comes out is more politically correct for the time than the previous one. And
right.
I was reading some very troubling things about how a lot of the newer versions go out of their way to pretty up some tough concepts that really need to be dealt with head on, such as slavery and and talking about Jews in the Bible and things like that. How a lot of the language has been softened to make it a little friendlier, and how that might not be an appropriate. And how going back to the source probably would make that a lot clearer what the original intention of the Bible, and seeing it in the time it was created better.
I mean, I'm sort of two minds about that, right? I was speaking in terms of the languages, in terms of theological schools, so persons who want to be pastors or persons who want to be academics in the church. For use at home, for home devotions, for instance, I don't so much see a problem with that. I'm not sure one needs to be shocked and whacked over the head with some of these rather awful things in the Bible if one is trying to do a devotion not to the Bible but to the God of the Bible. However, I do think there is something to be said of understanding what Karl Barth would call the strange new world of the Bible. And part of that understanding of that strangeness is to say there are a lot of things in there that are not good. And, that we today really should critique. And it's an immediate critique of fundamentalism, right? And precisely why I'm more than a little, precisely why I think the American system as a whole is making a mistake in cutting out almost all, if not all, language requirements for theology students is because the best way to critique fundamentalists is to be able to argue with them from the Bible. And if you're just arguing from the NRSV, that's a fine, good translation. They're going to have better knowledge of Greek than we do. And I really don't want to, give that over to the fundamentalists. I think the fundamentalists have been in charge of Christianity in general for too long, and in charge of the Bible for too long. And one way to prevent that is to not give up totally on these languages.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear, actually.
I'm happy to oblige.
So since you've been over there in the heart of Luther country, where the Reformation happened and all of that for so long now, how has your view of Luther and the Reformation changed or evolved, or what new insights have you gained, do you think, by being so close to it now?
Well, I think, I'm close to it in a way, but I'm in Tübingen, right? Luther never came here. Melanchthon studied here. In fact, I've lived 30 seconds away from the place Melanchthon studied for 2 years. And lived, I guess. He lived and worked there in the what's called the Börse in Tübingen. But how I would say my image of Luther has shifted in the sense that I really realize all the things I don't like about him, right? I've been reading Luther in some capacity for a decade. That's an accurate statement. I wasn't reading it in German, and I certainly wasn't trying to do anything regarding citing Latin texts, but I was reading Luther quite actively and quite deeply when I was in the seminaries in the States, and now being here and particularly because Volker Lepine is a Luther scholar, a Luther and Middle Ages scholar. He also likes the Enlightenment, but anyway, different story. He really helped me see Luther as a mystic. And that was something that I had gathered with Jane Stroll out at PLTS. I mean, we certainly had talked about that. And of course, I knew of the Finnish scholarship on Luther that really wants to argue for theosis and or a divinization in Luther's theology, but it never was a main focus of mine to see Luther as incorporating, rooted in, and developing a kind of late Middle Ages passion mysticism. So that's been really exciting for me to understand that a theology of the cross for Luther is a form of passion mysticism and the blend of spirituality combined with theological knowledge. Yeah.
So I was always interested in your whole James Cone, Karl Barth take on that, and the whole theology of the cross thing.
Yeah.
How has that fleshed out for you over?
Well, I'm about to start writing on Cone in a week. And by a week, I mean, I'm moving out of the Stift. So if we, to anybody watching this, in which I'm grateful that you're interested in my work, by the way, to anyone watching, but I will say if we have to do this in 2 parts, the background will have to be different because I'm literally packing up my things to move out of here this weekend. So I'm going with a friend of mine, actually my German-American friend. I mentioned her briefly. And we're moving into a vacay together, and she and I have been friends for a while. She actually used to live behind me here in the Stift for a semester, and has done a fair bit of translating for Dr. Maltman. So it's a fun connection, but I'm moving into a vacay with her. And so that's why I say in about a week for Cone, because I need a few days to, pack up. And I've accumulated a lot of books in 2 years, I have to say, and it's lovely because I lived in this historic place. Pastors or professors would die, and they would give away their libraries, right? And everything I'm interested in terms of dialectical theology was like right there at my disposal, and it was like this is like paradise for me. Nobody else is writing on this kind of theology right now over here, and I'm getting all the free books. It was like a kid on Christmas. But anyway, I have to move all that.
Those books you're acquiring, are they mostly in German?
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. The English language books mostly now for me have to do with Cone and Black theology, although there are actually Dr. Maltman, or no, it wasn't Dr. Maltman, it was Professor Lepine, gave me an article in a German journal last year that was written specifically about the presence of Black theology in Jürgen Maltman's theology. But otherwise, most of that literature is in English. Anyway, your question, I took us a little far afield just by saying that I do have to move out of here, and I'm in the process of so doing. How has that shifted, or how is that coming along? I think very well. I mean, last fall, our winter semester, but Americans, we would say fall, I taught Cone here in the Stift. I spent 12 or 13 weeks with a small group of students. I can't remember if I had 3 or 4, but a small group of students from here. And I taught Cone's theology in general. I taught the cross and the lynching tree was the main focus, but also pieces from his earlier work and articles and interviews and, that whole thing. And then pieces from Dr. Maltman, and then a womanist theology piece from Linda Thomas, and Volker Lepine's beautiful essay on theology of the cross in relation to passion mysticism. And both Professor Lepine and Dr. Thomas were so kind to come on separate days by Zoom to talk to the people teaching us. It was just delightful. And so, how many times in my life am I going to get to teach my dissertation topic? Never. And so I got to do it here in the fall, and then in the summer semester I taught, and this time the text was in German, and I tried to do some of the sessions in German as well. I didn't always succeed, by the way, because that was before when I say a couple of months of speaking in German, I literally mean a couple of months that my breakthrough happened. So at the beginning of the semester, I was not there yet. But I jumped right in and taught Eberhard Jungel's masterpiece, God as Mystery of the World, or in German, Gott als Geheimnis der Welt. And that is important for my dissertation because Jungel is a Lutheran Barthian, and he really wonderfully mediates Barth and Rudolf Bultmann. And both Barth and Bultmann, major figures on Cone, major influences on Cone. So this is not, I'm not trying to make something up here. Jungel, I need for my dissertation. Matter of fact, I just cited that book yesterday, and I went, gosh, am I glad I taught this last semester, because I knew where that page was that I needed. So I would say it's come along well. Thanks to Dr. Maltman, I would say Karl Barth has become my favorite theologian. Maltman gave me over 2.5 years so many resources on Barth and on Barthian thought, and then I decided to do my dissertation with Barth as the link from the 16th century to the 20th, and so I took an overall what I might call Barthian framework, not Barthian method, but because I would be leery of doing something like that in an academic dissertation, but a Barthian framework for doing it. And the more I dove into the church dogmatics, the more I said, gosh, I'm not sure any theologian has touched me the same way Karl Barth has in 10 years. And again, that's all Maltman's influence. And so I told him, I saw him 2 days ago, I said, it's your fault that I became a Barthian. He was very amused.
So it's obvious that you've been greatly influenced by Dr. Maltman. And there is a chance he might see this, but can you think of any ways that you might have influenced him at all? Or any of your any of who's over here?
Oh, I don't know that I would. I don't know. I think he and I have a very good relationship. Whether I've influenced him or not, I guess I have to read his next book that's coming out in German on political theology. It's coming out next month, and it's essays that he wrote over this last year during the pandemic because, as he put it, he didn't have anything else to do. And but if have I influenced him? I don't know. I guess that would remain to be seen. I've never thought about it, honestly.
Well, I just like the idea that you're over there with your background giving a little American perspective on things.
In that case, perhaps, yeah. But I would say, in any case, that I'm very confident in saying this, that I have a very good relationship with him, and I always look forward to going to see him, and occasionally we exchange emails or something like that. And he always has fun reading for me every month, and that's actually my favorite part of studying with him, is this for fun reading that he gives me. And this month it was the 50th anniversary edition in German of what in English is called Theology of Joy, I think it is. It has his essay on play in there. And he actually wrote in German for Brach for excitement, because he had said that he was excited to read my chapter on Dietrich Bonhoeffer that I don't want to use the word cobbled together, but it felt like it in light of this move. But that I did do a first draft of this week. And then he gave me that book, and he said, this has just come out. And then he went back into his office to get something, and I followed him there. And I asked him, if he'd sign it for me, and he said sure. And I said, now I am excited about something to read this month. And then I went back into the study where we always met, and I was just waiting for him to finish up both my report for the scholarship organization, and then that he was going to sign that book. And how lovely it was when he came back and handed me the book, and it said that for excitement.
I can relate to that a little bit. Dr. Gritsch was a dear friend of mine, and I actually helped him with a few of his computer projects, putting some chapters of his book together when it might have been lost in the folder somewhere and everything. And it was always a pleasure to get a copy of one of his new books and have him autograph it for me and get to read it. And it's just, it's very, very rewarding when it's somebody that you know and respect so much.
And I'm very pleased, very, very, very grateful as well. Professor Lepine gave me several of his books before he went to Yale, and I treasure those as well. And of course, definitely have used them in the dissertation. So, that's always a lovely thing, isn't it, to get something like that.
But now with social distancing and so much happening online and so much communication happening through meetings like this, you're over there in Germany to get the source, and now because of COVID, how much of that are you forced to do things remotely and antiseptically when you're right there so close to everyone? What's the distancing like? Do you get to be are people in the same room together much for education and everything over there?
Well, that'll remain to be seen. I mean, as a doctoral student, I don't have to take classes. That's a major difference between Germany and America, and it's, by the way, something I'm very happy about. I like the freedom, and I can just go for fun, which is, of course, why I studied Hebrew extra, and then why I want to go to my beloved Hebrew teacher's Old Testament lecture. I guess I've decided that I want to do that rather than the direct language practice this winter. But that remains to be seen if we'll be in person or not. I think I saw something on the Tübingen website. You all can check it if you want. It's just unitübingen.de, and they have an English and a German website, and they both function. But I think I saw that they were aiming for in presence to be the normal modus operandi this winter. Now, does that mean that there might be some hybrids? Sure, I wouldn't be surprised at all, but I guess it remains to be seen. In terms of distancing, This last semester was relatively normal, particularly in the Stift. Most everybody was back. It actually was the first time that it began. So it was funny. Right when I started speaking German, like actually getting over that fear, was right about the time where things just started to feel normal before the pandemic hit, right? It reminded me of that. And I was like, oh, it feels like November 2019, and just in time to leave, because then I was going to pack up and move out. But before that, it was not, I mean, it was masked everywhere. There was a point where we were even, and I was not happy about this, by the way, we were even asked to wear masks on our floor, and I rolled my eyes to heaven. I was like, seriously. But, of course, did it. But that was, and when would that have been? Would that have been last fall? Yes, that would have been when Angela Merkel announced that we were going to go into a hard lockdown. And this was like November, December. That's when those regulations happened. And actually, Dr. Maltman had invited me to spend Christmas Eve with him. He was doing a worship in his garden with his daughters and a few friends from the neighborhood. And he had invited me. And I was delighted because I didn't know where I was going to go really on Christmas Eve. But then I got an email from him that said, unfortunately, because of the lockdown, we can't do it. And that was really hard, actually. That was even harder than the stupid mask on the dorm floor, because I was watching this virtual Christmas Eve worship and I was just like, no.
That is something we wanted to talk about. We very America has really not, we've not handled the COVID crisis very well. We're number one on the hit parade for cases, for deaths. I use Johns Hopkins COVID tracker as my source for valid information. And last time I checked, Germany was like number 37 on that list, which is fairly impressive. It makes it look like you're all much more serious and realistic about this than Americans have been. How does that feel over there? Do you feel like they're taking it seriously, that they're doing the right precautions, that some of these results are because of their good behavior and working together? Are they getting vaccinated?
I would have said that a month ago, but I still think it's 10 times better than the US, by the way, but I'm a little frustrated because, we've got the same problem here with people running out and partying and not even thinking about, any kind of distancing. And I see people on the steps of the Stiftskirche, which is the main church in the old town, and they're just, lined up wall to wall. It's not a wall, but across all the places where you can sit, just packed with people. And I'm thinking, and we wonder why our numbers are going up. And don't tell me that all those people are fully vaccinated, right? And I started to think that about May, or maybe it was June. I guess it was June. There were students celebrating the completion of their gymnasium exams, so their high school exams, and they were all partying outside of the school. And I thought, there's no way all these kids are vaccinated. There's no way, because at that time, it wasn't such the widespread vaccination of the population. And so I began to get a little frustrated. I was also frustrated last summer, frankly, for the same reasons. I thought, I get it. People want to be out. People don't want to feel restricted. But, there is a point where you say this is a worldwide health crisis. I'm not saying we need to be paranoid, which is why I was annoyed at wearing a mask on my own dorm floor at that one time. But I also don't think we need to be reckless either. There's some kind of balance to find. And that's when I realized, I'm in my 30s. I'm not 20 anymore. And I had kind of a laugh about that. But so, yes, I would say it's better than the US, certainly. But I would say I have been a little frustrated. Of course, there's about to be an election because Angela Merkel is stepping down. So that would be very interesting to see who they elect. Please God, not someone from the AfD, but anyway.
So you've been over there for a while. You're getting really comfortable. You planning on coming back?
It's funny you should ask.